The following content has been provided by RWTH Aachen University.
The other thing that we see is this, we talked briefly about this, I think, the long nose of innovation. You may remember the Casio watch with the sort of gesture-based touch interface that was from like 1980 something. It sometimes takes only, it takes only months to move from an invention to a first production, but it takes sometimes decades until a product genre is actually accepted. We've seen this with the watch and gestural interfaces as an example. And of course, as a small company, especially these days with Kickstarter and those kinds of crowdfunding your products, you actually have a chance to take radical moves and be very innovative. But large companies are struggling with that. They have a hard time being as agile as that. There are some examples in Norman's books that we'd like you to take a look at, the video phone and the section on keyboards that he talks about towards the end of his book. So basically, the thing to keep in mind is technology changes extremely rapidly, but people and culture change extremely slowly in comparison. That's also why what you learn here in DIS1 is so useful, because I don't see Brain 2.0 anywhere around the corner. So the basic things of human cognition and how we think about the interaction with our environments has evolved over millions of years, and it's not going to change within the next 30 years. So you're going to be fine for the course of your career with the things you learned here, at least as far as they concern the human. Maybe not so much the technology, but that's why we focus more on human questions in this class. Finally, then, if you look at the question of how you design or how you approach a solution space, we've already talked about some of that when we mentioned Buxton's ideas of how you explore design options, right? When you do incremental innovation, it's a very slow and it's a natural evolution process. But it's like hill climbing, right? So when you take the evolution of the car, you have this radical idea of the car, and it's this total new thing. But from then on, it's actually evolving at a very slow pace, just climbing small hills and changing gradually and moving in small parts. If you want to try a completely different hill, saying like, why don't we rethink mobility completely, you need to actually use a different approach, right? You won't be getting anywhere with the traditional product improvement approaches. That's sort of radical innovation, as Norman calls it, that changes paradigms and allows you to do that. This is actually now becoming more accessible to us as a society with techniques like rapid prototyping, DIY, 3D printing, open source networks. Anybody can go out and realize an idea, not just in software, but actually also in hardware. And so there's actually a general sort of feeding ground now for and fertile ground for making radical innovations as an individual even that we haven't seen any time before in history. So it's a pretty good time to try these things and be a little more extreme about the ideas you're trying to implement rather than evolutionary improving the state of the art. Couple more reading suggestions. This is the book by Alan Dix that I've referred to a couple times, especially in the section on notations. A lot of the material was taken from that book, and it's, I think, still the best single-volume textbook on HCI for people like us in the engineering and computer science disciplines to get a hold of and read up on. There's also Ben Schneiderman's book, Designing the User Interface, which is now in its 5th edition, an incredibly long running hit and very successful and gets revised continuously. I think it is especially useful if you are interested in a particular user interface technique like voice interfaces or gesture interfaces. You take a look at that chapter in Schneiderman's book, and he will give you excellent pointers, often updated with fairly current research results on that particular area. Now, they haven't been updating this very lately, so the last one is from 2009, and technology is advancing rapidly. But still, I think it's a very good start for exploring.
This content was provided by RWTH Aachen University.